right, for this episode, all I managed to have time for was reading some old books, a collection of comic book series, one in Elseworlds and the other one of the Rebirth books, the original Rebirth that DC Comics did. This is all DC Comics this time around, which I tend to lean more towards these days, and Marvel mostly stuff of the past. And finally, the latest issue of Shazam. So that's what I got. So first off is Green Lantern Rebirth. So I started reading the new Green Lantern series they have now, and I think who was I watching who was doing a review of it? But they made mention of that a lot of the setup of the new one was very similar to the Rebirth story. Now, Green Lantern Rebirth was a means by which Jeff Johns brought back Hal Jordan and redeemed him. They were way back when they were getting rid of Hal Jordan, and they were going to replace him with a younger, hipper Green Lantern character who was also, I think, was one of the examples of chasing Peter Parker. They wanted a Peter Parker type character, and they sort of did that with Kyle Rayner, and it worked for a while. Just on the outside of it, I wasn't heavily. I'd taken a break from comics then. It lasted quite a while. I read a lot of alternative comics, 8-Ball with Daniel Klaus, and all these artsy comics and stuff, which are great, but they're not, in the mainstream of superheroes and that sort of thing. And that was about it, but I did keep up with like Wizard Magazine and stuff like that, and it appeared that Kyle Rayner was very popular in the 90s for a time. I often thought that perhaps Wally West's Flash was probably even more popular than Kyle Rayner. But anyway, that's how the setup was at the time. But to get there, they really did an awful deed to Hal Jordan, who the idea is that he lost his mind when Coast City was destroyed. Now, Coast City was destroyed in Superman, not in Green Lantern. Of course, Green Lantern responds to it, but this was all a part of bringing Superman back from the dead. So you had the reign of the Superman story, where you had these different Supermen, and none of them were the real one. The real one was being revived at the Fortress of Solitude and all that stuff. Anyway, he comes back, and there's this plot with Cyborg Superman and Mongol. And really more Cyborg Superman, I think, than Mongol. But anyway, they give Mongol the credit of destroying Coast City. It was just obliterated. Well, Superman returns, gets his powers back and all that, and Green Lantern kind of helps. Well, it's his city that got wiped out. And so yay, Superman's back, and that was the end of that. So then you go to Green Lantern, and he's got no city. So he goes bonkers over this. He tries to use his Green Lantern ring to bring the city back. Of course, it's only an illusion, really. He couldn't really bring it back, and he's devastated by this. So the Guardians admonish him for abusing the power for his own selfish means, and he decides to go to fight back against them and take all the power in the power battery for himself. Ends up killing a lot of them, a lot of other Green Lanterns and whatnot, to just absorb as much power as possible to restore Coast City. And then eventually he goes on to, I need to fix all the problems with the universe. He even goes into a plot I think that ultimately was part of Zero Hour. It's been a while. Wanting to undo the Crisis on Infinite Earths. I kind of wish he had succeeded. So that sort of thing. He became a super duper powerful villain called Parallax, and then ultimately he was kind of the villain for Kyle Rayner, and that sort of thing. And then he redeems himself by sacrificing himself in a story called Final Night, where the sun went out. So there was no sun, and then Hal Jordan uses his power to reignite the sun, of course killing himself in the process, but it works. And they're like, well, his last deed was sacrifice and heroic in that aspect. So some kind of saw that as some redemption for him. Batman never forgave him. So later on, there was another story. Hal Jordan becomes the host for the Spectre. So he's the new Spectre for a while. And then in this story, he's still the Spectre, but there's a plot underfoot, and Kyle Rayner stumbles on it that Parallax was something different than just Hal Jordan picking a new name for himself. So this was how Jeff Johns revived him. So he goes in to explain that the Parallax entity is a creature that feeds on fear and basically possessed Hal Jordan. And it was part of the impurity that the Guardians had imprisoned within the power battery that limited the power that the Green Lanterns had. And at the time, there was a lot of that, assuming they'd be too powerful if you didn't. But here it was to imprison this entity, and that's how they, you're retconning the story, sort of. But hey, who's to say it wasn't? And so this gives Hal Jordan an out. It wasn't his fault. He was possessed by this monster. And it was the monster that did these things. Batman wasn't buying it at first, but that's the deal. And Hal Jordan is resurrected through all of this. His body actually never decomposed or anything because of the power that it possessed. It was perfectly preserved. So when he was reunited with his body, he was back to his old self and all that. So hey, it works out. And so he is Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, and he was back, and it was popular for a while. And the Green Lantern titles hit some pretty big heights for a while there. It's like even when they got to the New 52, they didn't want to mess too much with the Green Lantern titles and the Batman titles because those were doing really well. It was everything else that was in the dumps. And so a lot of the aspects of them stayed the same despite the supposed reboot where they start over and that sort of thing. I don't know how much what trouble that may have caused for the Green Lantern titles. It may not have, but the Batman titles, it really did damage because you had all these Robins and he only had a 5-year career at that point. It didn't compute. But anyway, so the similarities in it is Hal Jordan coming back home and connecting with his old life and stuff like that. So there is some similarity to that with what they're doing now in Green Lantern, of him wanting to come back and he's sort of reuniting with Carol, his old flame, and will they or won't they, and that sort of thing. And it's the same situation. She engaged to another man and all this type of stuff. So yeah, that's true, but it's vastly different in getting there. And the new title, he's basically in exile from the Guardians for the moment and that sort of thing. Not quite as serious as the threat was with Parallax and all that and all the revelations for it. So yeah, some similarities, but quite different. But it was a thought out thing and a means by which to get him back there and to correct really which was a bit of a wrong there. No, not a bit, pretty bad to do that to a heroic character like that. And make him a mass murderer. Yeah, I mean, granted, his city was destroyed, and it's the kind of thing that could put someone over the edge, but it's probably best that they went ahead and retconned it. That no, he got possessed by this nasty creature, so there you go. The other one was a story, Elseworld story that Mike Mignola did. He only did the covers for. I really wish he had done the artwork for. All of its aspects is very fitting with his type of stories that he loves to do, of course, with Hellboy. And when you go back, other Batman stories that he did actually gave him the idea of going forward with a character like Hellboy. And so it made sense he would revisit Batman. And there's a lot of cool, creepy aspects to it. I'm not crazy about the artwork in it. It's odd in that and maybe this, no doubt this is the point, that it's more or less accurate in its presentation, but at the same time distorted. Because it's a very off and disturbing story, and all the stuff that happens to the people in this story. Everyone is basically turned into a monster, even Batman in it. But it's very much like a Hellboy story. Oh, there's this old, Lovecraftian creature on the verge of taking over the world and all this stuff. But it's also sort of predates a lot of the Scott Snyder stuff, and that Batman was always meant to be, even into the caveman days. The Wayne family was always connected to Batman. And all this stuff, but in the context of this one story, and all of it is very different. The only thing that maybe they kind of messed with was he's still this costume vigilante in the story. It doesn't really delve into it. I mean, it's just, well, his parents got killed, so he becomes Batman, and all that. But he spent 20 years searching for this site and looking for the lost Oswald Cobblepot expedition, which, of course, the Penguin, who literally is turned into a penguin man in this by these supernatural forces. So it's a supernatural take on Batman, but I thought it probably should have gone even further, that Bruce Wayne was some sort of occultist or whatnot, and when he ultimately literally becomes a Batman at the end, all that. So it was some interesting supernatural horror type takes on Poison Ivy and Two-Face. Boy, poor Two-Face. Jeez. He wasn't even a villain here. It was just this poor bastard who was a total victim of all of this, and what happens to him is disgusting. So it's got a lot of the trappings and atmospherics, but ultimately, of the two books, the Green Lantern one was better. I don't think it lands solidly. It has been adapted in an animated movie. I have not seen it yet. I'll see it when it's on Max, and we'll see how that goes. That'll be interesting to check out. For the most part, I have not liked the adaptions of some of these books. Gotham by Gaslight, the book is way better than the movie. Killing Joke, infinitely superior to the movie. The movie is terrible. So I don't know. Maybe since I wasn't completely sold on this one, I like some aspects of it. Maybe the movie will do better. We'll have to wait and see. So finally, Shazam, the new one with Mark Waid and Dan Mora taking that on. And it's fine. It's not as good as World's Finest, but it has Dan Mora's art, and the script is good. And it's got this little mystery going on about something's wrong with Captain Shazam. They call him the Captain now. I don't know why they didn't just go with Captain Thunder. That'll work. I don't know. And Mary could be Mary Thunder and so on. But, well, whatever. But there's a problem. He keeps lashing out at people uncontrollably. He seemingly wants to murder a man in this story, and Billy is stunned and doesn't understand what happens. It seems to indicate that the villain has done this, but it turns out it wasn't him. So it's this mystery that's ongoing about him. But still, the magical aspects of it are still very much apparent, even though he met an alien race of dinosaurs and fixed their ship so they could leave. But there was some paperwork he didn't fill out, so a dinosaur shows up. And it's a cute little thing of the sort of fairy tale aspects of that was very much a part of the original Captain Marvel stories and that sort of thing. So it's all very fitting in that. So it's a fine book. It's not bad. I have to wait and see where it's going. Of course, that's the, to be continued and all of that. And then there's trouble afoot in the Rock of Eternity, which may or may not be connected with what's going on with Billy and the Captain at the moment. So there you are. That's what I read for this very show. The only reason I did it was for that. Well, that would be stupid. So anyway, read some more for next week on Mr. Nailsin's Wednesday Comics.